The culture of solidarity for me is the opposite of the prevailing culture of rampant individualism and selfishness. This prevailing culture is promoted mindlessly by a consumerist system that seeks constant growth of productivity and the constant growth of consumption. This in turn seeks selfish individuals who are willing to sacrifice everything: their own time, their relationships, especially their relationships with their loved ones, to do anything necessary in order to earn more and to consume more. The individual is compelled to sacrifice his and her own well-being for the well-being of the economy. This ever-growing consumerist system has been put to a halt by this pandemic. We now see that the bond of fellowship is something that makes life meaningful. We now see that we shouldn't calculate whom to help. Every human being should be valued and protected. The culture of solidarity also means building a kind of herd immunity, which will protect us from the deadliest of all viruses, the viruses of selfishness, rampant individualism, and mindless consumerism. By stripping down the ideological and propaganda makeup of the neoliberal hyper-consumerist society, the COVID-19 crisis has opened up new possibilities for action and emancipation. It has also shown not only the structures and injustices of our societies, but also the possibilities for transcending them and building new, more just and more humane society. Thus, we should not only care about the creation and distribution of knowledge, but also for the preservation of the knowledge created during the crisis. First thing that we learned is that we must trust science. The pandemic is certainly a surprise for most of us, but it's not a surprise for the scientific community. For a long time, lots of scientists have been sounding the alarm that the deadly pandemic is imminent, that we should prepare for it, that we should build more resilient institutions, that we should allocate more resources to science, and that we should invest more in public health. But the politicians ignored them. The media ignored them. We all ignored them. If we took their alarms seriously, then we would have been more prepared. Now we know that there is never going to be a post-crisis conditions, but only an inter-crisis conditions. There is surely going to be another pandemic, maybe even more deadlier than this one. There is also another, even more disruptive and deadly crisis that looms over the globe. It is the climate emergency. I must repeat, we should listen to science. After the end of this crisis, we must prepare for the next one. We must build more resilient institutions. We must build solidarity networks. The climate crisis will strike poor countries with more force. So we must have international support networks. And what is most importantly, we must build a culture of solidarity and fellowship across borders, race, gender, ethnicity, nationality, etc. This crisis does bring forward the idea of social justice, but it also shows the power relations in our societies, which justify inequality and injustice. We see this in the economic charts. While on the other hand unemployment rates surges, the stock markets are also on the rise. This only means that the rich are getting richer, while the rest of us are struggling for bare survival. When the stock market's profits are indeed endangered, the ruling class shows its power and the inhumanity of the consumerist system. This is clearly shown in the urges for the opening up of the economy and the easing of restrictions. The system of endless growth, consumption and exploitation is prepared to sacrifice millions of lives for the sake of profit of the small group. This also shows the loss of power and influence by the labor unions and by the civil society overall. This in turn shows the dangerous erosion of democracy and consolidation of oligarchy on a global scale. But it also shows the way forward, what we must do in order to take the power back. In terms of artistic and cultural creation, I think that we should make plans for different ways of artistic and cultural expression. In times of lockdown, we have learned both the possibilities and the limitations of the digital communication tools. These tools can help us in better communication and coordination, but they cannot replace direct human interaction. So we must think more about the use of open spaces as an alternative to the enclosed artistic spaces. This is where the architectural profession should make more experimentations and find new and creative solutions. In terms of policy, we should also rethink the role of the public support for the arts and culture, the role of the state and of the civil society.